Now we will listen to a spiritual word from Dr. Michael. Yani we hope that the computer will help us, because there is a problem in the system from 2 days. So we hope that the computer will help us.
Okay, there is a YouTube video that was watched about 10 million times in 2013, and hopefully we'll be able to play it. And what it is actually comparing the size of our planet to the universe. And maybe the voice won't work, but you see, this is our galaxy, and this is Mars and Venus, and this is actually the size of Earth. And it compares the size of Earth to the rest of the planets. And you see how small it's getting, even smaller. We're still in the solar system, and this is the size of Earth compared to Sun. And then the rest of the stars in the galaxy, even the Sun itself is getting smaller and smaller when we compare the size of the Sun as a star compared to the other stars. And this is the blue supergiant, and then the blue hypergiant, and then there's the red supergiant. Those are all stars. You see how Earth is actually not even existing now when we compare sizes. And this is the biggest star we know in the Milky Way galaxy. This is the size of Earth now, even smaller than a pixel. This is a picture taken by the Hubble, which is the greatest telescope in the world. And it's demonstrating the Milky Way galaxy. And the Milky Way is one of the galaxies, and there are 100 billion galaxies. There's 100 billion galaxies, and the Milky Way is one of them. If you go on YouTube, you'll find the rest of the video. We actually tried to trim it yesterday to make it 2 minutes so it can fit to the 15 minutes I'm going to talk about today. And there is actually a scientist who is actually talking about this, and he's saying if there is a drop of red water, and you put this drop in the ocean, it's easier for us to understand the size of this drop compared to all the water in the world than it is to compare the size of Earth to just our galaxy, not to the universe, to just our galaxy. And if you think about this, you know that what happened in Christmas is no simple event. For God, who created all those galaxies, all those 100 billion galaxies, and the Milky Way is only one of them. For God, after creating all those galaxies, to accept, to consider that there is a planet called Earth, not even to come and visit us, to consider that there is a planet called Earth, if we say it's humble, it's a very underestimated word. It's probably, when we say God is humble, it's actually the most underestimated word in the English language, when we say God is humble. And there is a reason why the church wanted to put the praises of Kehk before Christmas. When we spend this whole month talking about nothing but how great God is, we will actually appreciate at the end of the month what Christmas is. Because we won't know what happened when God visited us until we actually spend this whole time thinking about how great God is. So the church is actually spending all of this time thinking about nothing but how great God is. So the church wanted us to spend most of our time. If you look at all the hoses, there's not even a single verse in the hoses where we're asking for anything. The church is standing in front of God saying, God, I don't want anything. I don't want any earthly or spiritual thing. All I want to talk to you, God, is how great you are, how amazing you are. You are the most amazing force on earth. Who is like you among gods? Who is like you, amazing in glory, performing wonders? Who is like you among the saints? The church is talking about how God, by wisdom, made the heaven and the earth, and and how God sits above the cherubim. This is all what is occupying our thinking in this month. All right? So as actually last week, Ronald was saying, if God, when we sinned, has called it a quit and called for a fresh start, it would take him a word of his mouth. God has all the power to restart a new creation. And it would actually be a fair game for God to restart the whole creation. It's a fair game because God said, if we sinned, we will die. And we sinned and we died, and there's a new start. And it won't take God more than a word to make a new creation. So the church wanted us to spend all of this time looking at the praise and to glorify God in everything. And there's actually more to glorify God that there is in the houses. Abuna Morris was talking to us on Friday, and he was saying when he visited the aquarium and he looked at how marvelous the fishes are, he was saying the first thing that came in his mind when he saw the colors of the fishes was how great God is, and how God is so wise and so powerful to create all those fishes. And if we think about everything we have, there is a lot of things even outside the third and the fourth houses in our nature that we can praise God for. There is our human body. There is every heartbeat. Every heartbeat, there is a lot of accuracy, and if we look at the electricity in the heart and how like valves are opening and closing for the God to even do one beat. You know, when they do open heart surgery and they stop the heart, they have to bring a machine that is the size of a room to perform the function of a heart, and it can only do it for 90 minutes. If we go more than 90 minutes, we get in serious trouble. You see, like the heart that's the size of a small hand, God made it to be actually stronger than this whole entire machine. And if you have any friend who actually is getting renal dialysis, you will see how he is connected to this huge machine for many, many hours. And this machine is only doing what the kidney is doing, and the kidney is actually this size, right? And it's doing what this machine is doing in 5 heartbeats. Every beat is doing 20%, 5 heartbeats. You see how God, everything that God created is talking about His glory and about His wonders. And we are actually missing everything. There is a doctor in New York. His name is Ken Rosenthal, and this doctor dedicated his whole entire life to think about changing the color of the eye, right? So there is in the eye there is the iris, and the iris is a very small disc, and it's the only thing that has a color in the eye. In the middle is the pupil, which is always black, right? So he wanted to dedicate his whole life to change the color of the eye, right? And actually, technically speaking, changing the iris is a very simple surgery. It's no harder than a cataract surgery. When we change the lens in the eye, it takes about 20-30 minutes, right? So changing the iris or putting another iris on the old iris, that's the blue or green color or any color, is actually a very simple thing. You know what's standing in front of him? That in this iris, there are millions of small muscles that is controlling the size of the pupil. That's make the pupil like either wider or narrower depending on the light that's in the room. So if there is a little light, it becomes wider and we can see, and if there's a lot of light, it becomes narrower and we don't hurt our eye. You know, there is no technology on earth that is able to do this very small function, and God has made it in a few millimeters. Everything, and I don't want to even speak to you about the brain and how 90% of the brain and how it works, we have no clue how it works. We don't understand anything. I mean, we spend all those years in studying and at the end, we understand that we don't know anything. And as they say, the more we know that we don't know. All right? And as Steve Jobs said, stay ignorant and stay hungry. Okay? The more we know, the more there is nothing that can explain how all those things in the nature are. And the only thing I think we can think of is how great God is. And this is what our church is wanting us to say. There is a new science that studies the heart. It's called the ephaptic transmission. Right? It tries to explain how our brain works. And the whole literature in this whole science is no more than 5 pages. The whole knowledge in the whole word is 5 pages. Everything we know is 5 pages about like a very small thing about how our brain works, right? So there is a lot that we come across in our life, and the only thing we can see and we can think of is how great God is and how amazing He is and how by wisdom He has made heaven and earth, and how by wisdom and by understanding His glory is above the heaven and earth, and He sits above the cherubim. So we can actually, in fact, and this is what I want to think about for 2014, we can write a 5th host. We can write another host about what we see, and it's not written in Tasbih, and how those things are really amazing. As Abuna said, Abuna saw in the aquarium and how the fishes are really good, and he started to write his 5th host. And how we can say how by wisdom you created the kidney and the liver, and how amazing you are when you made the eye and the brain. We can actually think about things that are outside the tasbih. Okay, you know, in the second week, Mina argued that this season is the happiest season of all, and those times are the most wonderful times of the year. And I think at least a big deal of the happiness that is linked to Christmas, in our church at least, is what happens in Kiak. Because the more we praise, the more we become happy. There is some psychology behind this. The more we praise, the happier and the happier we get. So when Mary's sister of Aaron saw what happened when the Red Sea opened, and then she started to praise God, she did actually a very smart thing. When she saw what happened, and she spoke about how God divided the Red Sea into halves, and how He threw Pharaoh and his chariots and all his captains into the Red Sea, and how God has led His people in the wilderness, and how He retrieved water out of a solid rock. She actually did a very smart thing. She reminded herself with the glory of God. And I think in everybody's life, there are things that are as amazing as splitting the Red Sea. And there is a very big benefit of reminding ourselves with those things. Maybe one time when probably I almost burned the house, or one time I almost went in an accident that would have killed me, or one time I almost killed somebody, or I almost went to jail, or I was almost fired. There are a lot of things in everybody's life that he can write in his own 5th host. And for instance, I myself went in an accident in Canada, and I almost died. Until now, I don't know how I'm still alive. So till now, you know, I forgot this, and I don't remember it every day. I mean, my life after this accident 6 years ago is actually a gift of God, from God, because this is a second life for me, right? And even with this, I don't remember it. I don't remind myself with it. I'm the only one paying the price for not remembering it. Because it's scientifically proven that if you remember those praises and if you remember all those things, you will be happier. It's actually scientifically proven that if you remind yourself with the good things that happen to you, you will be a happier person. I mean, think about it for a second. If somebody thinks that his whole life is just because of the grace of God, I mean, my life for those 6 years are just are a plus. It's a bonus. It's a gift. I shouldn't have been living this life. Then how can you make anything to bother him? I mean, like maybe like I didn't get the best job, or I didn't have an interview, or I'm making $10 an hour and this guy is making $20 an hour and I'm smarter than him. There is nothing that can bother him if he truly understands that everything he's having right now is just because of the grace of God. There is nothing that can bother him. I will finish with a very small story that we shared with the high school meeting about a couple of weeks ago. There is a psychologist in Harvard. His name is Sean Aker, and he wrote a book called The Happiness Advantage. And he speaks about how depression has become an epidemic, and how 20 to 30% of adults are on antidepressants in the United States. After all the luxury and everything and all the technology we have, 30% of us are on antidepressants. And he conducted this study in Harvard on the students in Harvard. And Harvard, as you know, is the hardest school to get in the country. It's the biggest school in the world. The budget, the amount of money they have is stronger than countries. Like they have more money than Egypt, for instance. They have more endowment. Their budget is more stronger than Egypt, right? So he did this study on the students in Harvard, and the reason why he did this study is actually very interesting, because he found that the students in Harvard have one of the highest suicide rates in colleges in the whole entire country. Okay, think of it. Those students are the smartest in the country. I mean, you have to be top 1 percentile. You have to be smarter than 99% of the people to get into Harvard. Yeah, I mean, you have to, like, everybody who was actually like a very smart kid in his state, and he has won an award, and he has excelled since he was in kindergarten. I mean, those are really, really, really the cream of the cream that made it to Harvard. And even after this, they have the highest suicide rate in the country. So he did this study, and he divided the study in two arms. In one arm, he gave the students antidepressants, things that are proven with all the studies and with double-blinded trials that actually work for depression. And the other arm, he had the kids do nothing except for one thing, right? So they lived their whole entire life, and they did only one thing different. And he followed all the kids for 6 and 12 and 2 years. And he found that kids who did the other thing had better outcome than the kids who took the antidepressant, and they had less relapse even after stopping doing this thing. And guess what this thing is? He had them get a sheet of paper and write 3 things that happened to them this day that are blessings. That happened to them this day that are blessings. He had every kid, before he goes to sleep, no matter how much his day was, to actually work his mind and think as hard as he can to get 3 things that happened to him in that day that were a blessing. And Abuna said, this is actually a very small, a very nice exercise, and he wants everybody to do it when we were talking. It's actually a very good thing to work your mind to find the grace of God and the things that you can praise God for. All right, and I'll finish with one thing. I'm sorry I'm too long. There is a saying that we all know, but it is very true, and it's very applicable to praising. The difference between praying and praising is when you pray, you go to God and say, God, I got a big problem. But when you praise, you go to your problem and say, problem, I got a really, really big God. Thank you.
Have mercy on us, O God, the Father, the Pantocrator, Holy Trinity, have mercy on us. O Lord God of